We are ready to start building up the flowers in this vector artwork. There's a lot of different ways you could do this. I'm going to show you one way just to review different techniques of creating photorealistic looks. So remember the first one, we used gradient mesh. You could, in theory, do gradient mesh also for these flowers. I'm going to show you a different technique just using a regular gradient and shapes. But you could get in there and develop each of the flowers. My piece of advice when doing something like this, and I'm not a still life floral artist, but I've done many over time. And my advice is pick a couple of the flowers, a couple of the leaves, and make them. Then duplicate, make small adjustments on each of those replicas so that they don't look duplicated, and use those as fillers. So I'm going to start with this front flower right here. And I'm going to build off of these shapes. And then we'll move on from there. So first things first is I have a new layer called flowers. I've locked all my other layers so that I'm not messing anything up. And I've come in here and I've grabbed some colors for my flower. I grabbed this flower light, so this really light pink. I grabbed the flower dark, which is this base deep color. I grabbed a couple of hues in between, one that is more pink, one that is a little more orange, and then I grabbed the yellow. So I've got kind of my base idea with my colors. Okay, so I'm going to start with this first flower. And I don't want to be literal. I'm not going to stop it right here. I'm going to build on this. I'm going to picture that this leaf is much bigger than what I can see and kind of build it that way that I think it more is in reality. So I'm just going to start. Already looked a little funny. And I'm not going to freak out about the detail just yet. Again, I'm not going to stop right there and go in because I know that this leaf goes a little bit further. But I can end it right there. Alright, so that's my first leaf. I am going to give it just a base, and then I'm going to swap that out. I'm going to leave it like that, and I'm going to build up these other ones. So I'm going to come in, and next I'm going to do these two different leaves. So here's this one. And I'm going to go around because this flower's coming up in front of it. I'm not going to get every little detail in this when I do my gradient, but I don't want my shapes to look too basic. So I am going to put in some of that. Great. Next I'll build this leaf. Not 100% certain where that little edge is. And this guy is kind of flat because he's bent back behind him. That looks like it's the different leaf. Good. Next, and I'm closing each of these as I go. I'm not leaving them open. Next, I'll get this guy in there. And I want him to cover up kind of the edges, all the bottoms of those other leaves. Okay, next I need to get this leaf, and he may need to get moved back behind. I think he's with this, not 100%, but we're going to put him in there. I know that this is going back over onto this other leaf, but I'm going to get him in. Nice, and I can always move that. Okay, so now I can see these other two. See the little inside petals? It's kind of really hard to see. I mean, there's so much that this piece of the detail, so I am going to do these little guys. I think he's pretty close to that. And I'm going to get in here and do this one, which is getting a little hard to see with all my strokes, but I kind of know what I'm looking at. At any point, I could go back into my layers. You could turn the view off on your layers if you needed to. Okay, I have a basic shape. Let's just see how this looks. And it's not too bad. All right, so now we're going to add in color, right? Because that's what it needs to look better. And I'm going to go ahead and set this first one up with a gradient. Oop, gotta give it a fill. Then you can add your gradient. And I know I kind of want them to be a little bit like this. You could get in there with a radial gradient, and I may switch to that. You have to build that up a little different. Sometimes see how it looks just like a regular gradient, but when you pull it much bigger, what that does for me is just gives a little bit of the roundness. So I'll probably leave them like this and play around with them. Okay, so now without messing up any of my other stuff, I'm going to move this one leaf. And then I'm going to start coloring him. So where it's white, I've already developed my colors, and that's more of the light. Next is like a base. Well, we'll go straight to the dark. Get that dark one in there. So there's just your base, and it looks weird, right? Let's stick in that yellow in the middle. Little closer. I think that we need some more of this. I think it goes light pink. Really, it goes pink, yellow, dark pink. So I need a little bit more of the pink. I could move this, but I need a little bit more of that base pink. So I'm going to hop in, grab some of my base color. It's not bad. And then, although I say it lightly, I'm going to add in one more with kind of that orangey color that I've grabbed from the bottom down here. Okay. Now I'm going to manipulate till I can get them to look a little bit closer to what I want. And this takes a lot of time, and you just have to be very, very patient as you're using your gradient. We're going to try, I don't want to get him too far. I just kind of want to move them around a little bit. And actually what I really want now that I'm looking at it is they're curved more like this, right? The flower. So I kind of want to get that curve more that way. So with that being said, you can come in and just swap your colors. Remember where you're at, move them. That's not going to be too hard. I only have to move these 4. Then that gives me a little bit more of the curve that I want. Okay, I can bring back in my pink a little bit more. I can pull this guy back down. This yellow needs to get a little further. And he's getting close. You've got to have some form of comfort level manipulating these gradients. So this is just great practice of getting in there and trying to get the colors that you're really looking for. I'm trying to get rid of that harsh line on the yellow. And that's getting much closer. I just don't want you to be able to see too much of a line there. So I'm just kind of going back and forth till I've gotten pretty close. And that's not bad. I've got a nice tip. I get that that doesn't look exactly like my real one, but it's got a lot of variation. And when you see the finished product, you're going to be happy with the floral. Now, again, you could go in there and you could create a gradient mesh for all of these leaves and eventually get it to look almost exactly like the photograph that's below it. But this is kind of a quick and dirty way. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I know I can kind of transfer this gradient over to other flowers, but you need to be careful with that as well. And set that up and keep it. Great. So let me just show you what it looks like if we were to transfer that over. Right? Weird. So what I can do now though is go in and just kind of individually tweak them. Not the direction I needed him to go. Much closer. I'm going to go back in and look at how each of these look afterwards. I'm going to add variation to them. Trying to get that basic shape. Getting rid of these strokes that I was using to be able to see. You can see I'm kind of manipulating where I'm starting my point based on how I want that kind of curve, how I'm using the gradient to show the curve of the actual petal. And this guy's going to have to get a lot of change. Ooh. Oh, okay, so good example. Why it's not working, make sure your fill gets pushed to the front. You're not trying to swap them. You're just trying to put them to the front. Okay, so now I can manipulate him. Now, and I know this one has very, very little yellow. So I'm going to start him like that, and then I can go in and change that guy. Okay, I need these. Ooh, I think I have a lot more yellow. So we'll kind of leave him like that. We can always go back and manipulate. And same with this guy. Okay, before I move on, this petal needs to get in front of everybody. So I'm going to move over to my layers. You can see everything you're working with. Here he is right here highlighted, and I'm going to move him to the top. I'm also going to lightly adjust this guy to fill in some of these holes that I'm seeing. There, just a little bit. And the same with this one. That's going to help me in the long run. Okay. Perfect. Now, I know it doesn't look exactly like that. So I'm going to now go in and start adjusting. I do think it's all right to move your stuff at this point. That's not that big of a deal, but you've got to be really careful when you're moving them that you can get them back into their same spot. You could also go in here and hide. So like if I want to work on this one flower, I could go in here and just hide all of these guys so they kept them in their same spot. Okay, so this flower, he needs to be just mostly that pink. So let's just drop the orange. Let's leave a little bit of that so that they all have the same hue. If I go changing too much of the color, I can make him not look like he fits into this family of flowers. So you've got to be kind of careful with that. All right, let's go check him again. I'm leaving that little bit of an edge. I'm going to take a little bit of it off, but I want a little bit of edge because I know that that's helping me build the shape. Undo. Yeah, it's going to be a lot easier if I manipulate over here. So see as I pull this, I want a little bit of that guy. I definitely want some of him to show forth. You didn't need him quite so big, but if you need, sometimes you need your curve to be much bigger so that you can get the arc in the gradient that you want. So like, yeah, I'm not really using the grand majority of this gradient, but that's no big deal. Okay, let's go check him again. He's in the right realm. He's not perfect, but he's pretty close for me. Let's check the next one. Oh, he needs adjustment. Definitely. So he is much more orangey, much less yellow than I thought. And it almost looks like the yellow swaps. So again, I could move this guy so I can see him. I'm just going to move him right back down to place. So really, he almost has this direction and this direction. I don't want so much, so I'm going to get my pink in there because he needs to be there. I don't want this guy taking over with his dark. Okay. That's in the realm. Back into place. Good, and let's look at our next guy. Okay, let's move him. And the yellow is way, just kind of barely up there. It's got a lot of orange in this dark. That actually is pretty close to him. Showing a little bit more orange, but that's okay. Next. And I can hide these if I need to. Leave just this guy up. He has almost no yellow. So really, he's got kind of, we don't want that. We want to keep a lot of the color in there as he's got some of that on this side. Adding in a little bit more of that darkness. Keeping some of the coloring. To show a little bit of light. Okay. Gonna move him back to where I think he is. This guy shows far less yellow. So we're just going to drop his yellow. His orange down here is pretty close, but I feel like this needs to be moved to get a little bit more of that light edge. Now, all this variation and all this work is totally going to pay off when you see the final result and you only had to make 2 flowers. Pretty close. Next. I'm already pretty happy with that guy. And then this one, I know he's right on the realm. So let's now look at these all together. So the yellows have definitely started to take over a little bit. And I want to be careful with that. And I also want to make sure I've got enough white or of that light color in there. I'm going to push him just a little bit on this edge. A little bit on this one as well. It's kind of where the light is coming from anyways. Okay. I understand that's not perfect, but it is really close. So let's fix this little hole in here just so we don't have to see him. He really needs to get just a little bit darker down there. So I'm going to beef that up. Do not mess up your gradients that you've spent so much time on. And I'm going to push that a little bit. I just want to get these a little bit darker because when I look back and forth, there's a lot more dark in the center than I've really given them. Push him. And that dark's going to help create that depth that you need for that realistic look. Okay, get him. Awesome. Almost there. We have another flower to do. I'm gonna hit save, Command S. Now I'm gonna show you how we can put in just a little bit of like a vein detail, let's say. So while I have this layer, I'm going to, where I know that line is, I'm going to create a couple of shapes to define this line. The outer shape is going to be more the base color of the flower, whatever that is. This is probably going to work with this guy. You can have to change these sometimes because I'm going to want this guy to blend out eventually. I'm going to make now another little center. Did not need to make an extra line. I just want to make a small center shape. And then I'm going to show you all how you can use blend. Okay, so I've got these two shapes. Let's double check I'm in a close to where it needs to be. Good. Okay, so you've got this object blend and blend options. So smooth looks good. And I can hit OK. It's not going to do anything. It's a trick with blend. You have to go back in another time and hit make. So not bad. He looks a little crazy. A little way too dark. I'm going to try turning it very far down and seeing if it still gives me a little bit of a line. And he does. Now, you can't put a gradient on these. I'm going to see what happens if I change it to the lighter color. Oh no. Let's change him back. And I'm going to bring in these points just a little bit. It's just too dramatic. I'm trying to get a little bit of definition in there, but I don't want this like harsh point. Can go in. One of my favorite tools is after you've made a point and you didn't have a curve on it, you can always add an anchor point. Now, if you step back, he's getting us at least a line. I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to turn back this even further. I know I keep going back and forth, but it's just the process. I like how it gives some definition to the flower and a little bit of variety. Okay, I'm not going to add the dots in right now for time's sake, but you could do a very similar to what I just did here by making two shapes. One would be more the base color shape, and then the second one would be the shape, the color of the dot, so that the smaller shape on the inside should be the darker, so that it's going to fade out to that lighter shape. All right, we've got one flower. Let's make one more, and then let's build this guy up. We're going to come over, just got to find a flower that you can see enough that you can replicate. He's not a great example, but I'm going to try something with this. Same technique that I've done for the other. I'll start with this outer leaf. I know he has kind of the outer edge. I'm going to do the quick way of just keeping him all in one. There's one shape. I'm going to go back to my outlines so you can see what I'm working with here. Okay, now I'm going to try this leaf back here. Great. It's hard to delineate where all the leaves are, so I'm kind of hopping around a little more than I did on the first one. I will tell you, it doesn't always come natural right off the bat. Sometimes you've got to try a technique. Let me try this. And then you figure out, okay, well, that's definitely not going to look like what I need for my final result. So you can't be afraid to try some things and fail at them. That's where some of the best artwork comes from. Okay, we're gonna get this flower petal in here. And I just can't fully tell if this leaf goes with it or not, but we're gonna go for it because we need that back leaf for sure. I'm not feeling 100% confident about my outline and grabbing its best spot, but I'm pretty confident I can manipulate it to get it what I need to eventually. I kind of feel like it deserves a little bit of a petal over here, even though I can't totally decipher if one of these is it. So we're gonna put them in anyways. Okay. All right, now we're gonna color him just the same way we did the other. I'm gonna grab all of my pieces, just get that base gradient, not great. Take off the stroke now so I don't have to keep doing that. And then go back into my layer where I can see them more individually. There's my first one, so I'm going to lock all of these. Here's where I had started with this flower. And I'm going to hide all except for one. Ugh, he is a struggle. Don't have my fill forward. Try our next. Way too much yellow. This guy just barely has any yellow. He's a lot more of that, which kind of makes that leaf look like it's tipping back. So I'm pretty happy with that. Locking my layers as I go, trying to stay a little more organized. I can also kind of hide these guys if I need to. He does have a lot of orange. You're going to pick up speed as you go. Getting some dark in there. He's got a lot of the light, so I don't want to get too much in terms of the yellow. He's got really dark. So I'm moving this around. I want it to sort of give this vibe. with the lighting. Make sure when you're moving a gradient you can hold onto the white bar. That's how you move it. Okay. This one's going to be a struggle. He's got a weird shape. I almost should have done him into two different pieces. I'm going to attempt to shape some of those pieces on my own using the gradient. See, I can get it almost an edge. Very little yellow in this. I'm going to take that yellow out altogether. Way too dark. Oh yeah, that's much better. Okay. Lock, that's fine. Now, I need to get him towards the front. Rearrange the layers so that they show up properly. He needs to go to the far back. There we go. He got moved. There we go. Okay. So I have two flowers. Great. Now how to make all those others without killing myself. I'm going to stop here. Make sure you hit save, Command S, and when we come back, I will show you in the next lesson how to fill in these flowers extremely quickly.